Welcome to the Gubernatorial Candidate Forum. I'm Judy Wahlberg, and I'm president of AFSCME Council Five. We're a mighty, powerful union of 43,000 Minnesota workers. We advocate for excellence in services for the public, dignity in the workplace, and opportunity and prosperity for all working people. Governor Mark Dayton has announced he won't run for re-election. That means working people must unite to elect another pro-worker governor in 2018. Our survival depends on it. No one knows that better than the leaders of our labor movement. Seated in the front row are AFSCME Executive Director Elliott Seid, Denise Speck from Education Minnesota, Jamie Gully from SEIU, Bill McCarthy, the president of the Minnesota AFL-CIO, and Julie Blaha, Secretary-Treasurer of Minnesota AFL-CIO, and Alan Netland from the Northeast Area Labor Council. Our labor movement is united by shared values and common purpose. We believe all working people deserve the same freedom corporate CEOs have, the freedom to negotiate a fair return on our work so we can provide for our families. We have zero tolerance for politicians like Scott Walker who want to take away our freedom to join together. Today, I'm joined by 900 union members who proudly do Minnesota's work. Our support matters. We make the calls. We knock on doors. We talk with our friends and family, our coworkers, and our neighbors. That's how we win elections. Today's 2-hour forum will include opening and closing statements from 6 candidates. Our moderator will ask them to respond to 7 audience-generated questions. It's our chance to see where the candidates stand on issues that matter to working people. I'm grateful that all 6 announced DFL candidates have joined us today. Please treat them with respect, and please hold your applause until the end of the forum. That way we'll have enough time for the candidates to answer all of our important questions. Thanks to Labor Education Services and the Uptake for live streaming our forum and projecting it onto the screens at the front of the ballroom. Please keep the aisles clear for their cameras. Many of you know our esteemed moderator, Barbara Riles. We've invited her back. We've invited her back because she did an amazing job of refereeing 11 governor candidates on this stage in 2009. Barbara recently retired as news director for KBJR 6 and Range 11. She's a trusted voice who has broadcast news to the Northland for 38 years. Please join me with a warm AFSCME welcome for our moderator, Barbara Riles.
Thank you, President Wahlberg. I have to say it's really nice to see this sea of green out there and a show of union solidarity. And the occasional green hat, those are pretty cool too. Those of you who knitted your hats, pretty cool. I'm Barbara Riles. I'm honored to moderate AFSCME's forum. I stress it's a forum, not a debate. It's the unofficial kickoff of the DFL campaign for governor. My job today is to keep these fine candidates in line. I got 3 kids, so I know how to do this. So I'm going to go over some simple ground rules. Today's 2-hour forum will include opening and closing remarks from each candidate. In between, I'll pose 7 questions generated by the audience and maybe a couple more if there's any extra time. These questions were generated by the audience, narrowed down or solidified by the AFSCME theme team. Candidates will have 1 minute for opening remarks, 1 minute to answer each question, and another minute for closing remarks. That should be easy to remember. Our timekeepers, Nixon and Suzanne, can you guys stand up? Nixon and Suzanne, where are you? Who is it? Omar and Suzanne. Omar and Suzanne. You know, Omar and Suzanne are among the most powerful people in the room today. So their signs will tell you when you have 15 seconds remaining. When your time is up, they'll show you the stop sign. We don't have the State Patrol here, but a stop sign means stop. This forum is not a debate, as I mentioned. It is a forum, so please refrain from arguing with one another. Not that you'd ever do that. We have an enthusiastic audience of about 900 people. I ask you right now to silence your phones if you haven't already. You don't want to be that embarrassed person whose phone's, singing a little song, a little ditty while you're pretending it's somebody else. So silence your phone and hold your applause. I know you guys are enthusiastic, and I know that you support things that these guys are going to say, but if you hold your applause until the end of the forum, that we'll have enough time then for the candidates to answer all of your very important questions. All 6 announced Democrats are here on the stage. We welcome them. They're seated alphabetically from left to right, beginning with Chris Coleman, the mayor of St. Paul. That's you down there, right to left. Tina Liebling, a state representative from Rochester. Erin Murphy, a state representative from St. Paul. Rebecca Otto, Minnesota's state auditor. Paul Thissen, state representative from Minneapolis. And Congressman Tim Walz from the 1st Congressional District. I met with Congressman Walz not very long ago, and he asked me to please speak to Congressman Nolan about not running. So all right, 1 minute for each candidate, and we are going to begin right away. We have shared microphones, so you guys can just make your remarks right from where you're sitting. Chris Coleman will begin.
Well, thank you so much. As a former AFSCME member, I'm very proud of the fact that the first official forum is in front of the green machine. Glad to be with you all today. And let me just express, first of all, my profound sadness on the passing of Robin Madsen. Robin was a friend, a mentor, and when she needed to be, my harshest critic, and she kept me in line, and she's going to be profoundly missed. Yesterday, a legislative commission rejected a fairly bargained-for contract. It was a decent contract. It provided a minimum raise for all of you and continuation of the work that we've done together, and it was rejected by the Republican cabal in the state legislature. Don't have any doubt about this. There is a war against state employees, against public employees, not just in the state, but in this country. I want to lead the fight back against the people that don't respect you and don't value you for what you do. I know that together we can set a progressive vision for the state of Minnesota. We can move forward and continue in the great tradition of this state, investing in our people, investing in our families, and investing in our economy. I want to be the champion for you, a leader of all state employees, and I'm anxious to continue this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. Tina Liebling is next.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Tina Liebling, state representative from Rochester, and I also am a former AFSCME member, AFSCME Council 31. When I lived in Chicago area, I was on the bargaining committee. I was on the executive committee of my local. So I'm very happy to be here with you today. So when I ran and was elected in Rochester, I'm now in my 7th term in the Minnesota House of Representatives. I am the first Democrat to be elected there in over 30 years. And I did it as a progressive. I've always been a bold progressive, which means I've always been solidly on the side of the ordinary people of Minnesota, who I call the heroes of Minnesota, the people who do the real work. And I'm running for 3 reasons, basically. One is that the working people really need a voice, that we have to be sure that we're for the working people, not the big shots and the insiders. We can't be people who put our finger in the wind to see which way it's blowing. We have to have strong, solid, progressive principles. And I can stand up to the bullies. And that's really important. Thank you. I'm glad to be here with you today.
Thank you, Erin. Rebecca Otto is next.
Hi, my name is Erin Murphy.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, Barbara
You know what?
Riley.
Erin is next.
That's right.
Sorry, Erin.
That's all right. My name is Erin Murphy. I am a registered nurse and a teacher. I'm a state legislator and a mom, and I'm running for governor. And I'm running for governor because I believe in a kind of politics that improves people's lives. And when we do that together, we build a bright future for everybody in the state of Minnesota. I want to do that with you. There is not enough time in this 1 minute for me to tell you my story, but let me say this. I grew up in a union household. My dad built cars for a living, and he taught me through his work the power of solidarity, of sticking together. As a nurse, I left the bedside and worked for 14 years with the Minnesota Nurses Association because I believe in the labor movement. I was the first person seated when the Minnesota Nurses Association affiliated with the AFL-CIO. I was the first person there, and since I have been elected, I have continued to fight alongside with you for working people, and when I'm elected governor, I will continue to do that work with you so we build that bright future. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Thank you. These guys are great. They're as good as news people for knowing exactly when 30 seconds and 1 minute is up. So excellent. Let's keep that up. Rebecca Otto is reeling now.
All right. Hi, I'm Rebecca Otto, the Minnesota State Auditor. I'm so happy to be here with you today and have this opportunity to address your convention and members. I am a 3-term state auditor. I'm the first Democrat woman to ever be elected to that office. I'm the only Democrat to ever be reelected. And it's been my honor and pleasure. I get to work with local government folks around the state. I've been in every corner of the state. And I'm running for governor because I am running against what I call the politics of unfettered greed. And the politics of unfettered greed is threatening our quality of life. And it is fueled by big money and propaganda campaigns and dark money in our campaigns or in the election cycle. And the politics of greed says that all taxes are bad and they must be slashed, that all the protections for us are bad and they must be repealed, and that all government workers are bad, and that's nonsense. And they want to privatize everything. And there's a better way, and it's called the politics of the common good. And so I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
All right, Paul Thissen is next.
Well, thank you for being here. And, you know, I've had the great pleasure and honor of visiting all of you, many of you in your hospitals and in group homes and in union halls and city halls and cafes all across the state of Minnesota. I've learned a great deal. And I've also worked with you at the Capitol for years to push back against anti-labor legislation, to pass the biggest expansion of collective bargaining rights in a generation in this state, to make sure that we raised the minimum wage and got to equal pay for equal work for women. That is stuff we did together, and I think we know each other well, and we can work together well. But I want to talk a little bit about the future today. This Janus case that is coming down is probably the biggest threat to the labor movement, maybe in its history. And we need to fight it, but if it happens, it will change the landscape. And I want to tell you the response to that, in my mind, is to organize, organize, organize. And as the next governor, I will organize with you, because not only is it good for you, but it's good for everyone you serve. You are the advocates for the child that needs child protection services. You are the advocates for prison workers. You are the advocates for the transportation workers that keep our roads clear. We in Minnesota need you to be there, and we shouldn't be undermining your ability to advocate for yourselves and the people you serve. And as your next governor, I will stand there right with you.
Thank you, Paul. Next up, Tim Walz.
Well, thank you. I'm Tim Walz. I'm a public school teacher from Mankato. I'm a football coach of a state championship team at Mankato West. I'm a 24-year veteran of our nation's Army and Army National Guard. I have the privilege of being the highest-ranking enlisted soldier in the history of this country to serve in Congress. More importantly, I'm husband to Gwen and dad to Hope and Gus, a 16-year-old and a 10-year-old. I've had the honor of representing the 1st Congressional District, the 2nd Democrat in 125 years, and I know that there's many green shirts out here that made that possible. What I know is how to build winning teams. I know how to take messages to every corner of this state. And I'm running for governor because I grew up in a family that watched medical bills and forced my mom to put off retirement for 20 years after my father died and we were young. I'm running for governor because I know as a teacher what that public school does to opportunity, and I know what it's like as a teacher to take money out of your paycheck to make sure that every child gets an opportunity. We can take a progressive labor message to every corner of the state. We can take our message to our neighbors who don't understand what we do. We can take this message and make sure that the Minnesota that we love and hold dear continues on. Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much. You've got a lot of impressive titles in this group, but I hope you don't mind if I refer to you by your first names, and just for the sake of timing. Our first question, remember, 1 minute. Keep an eye on these guys with the signs. Our first question will be addressed down the line to each candidate in the order that we did our 1 minute opening statements. All right, so the question is, and these questions are from these folks, this sea of green sitting out here. These questions have come from them, so these are things that are very close to the hearts of our AFSCME members. AFSCME members do Minnesota's work. It's getting harder to provide public services when the state rides a budget roller coaster. How can the state provide stable funding for the services Minnesotans need and want? All right, we're going to begin with Chris Coleman.
Well, thank you. The state of Minnesota is facing a fiscal cliff in just a couple of years, and we need to address that. In 2005, when I became mayor of the city of St. Paul, I was coming in on the heels of Norm Coleman and Randy Kelly, who for 12 years played gimmicks with the budgets, shifted the costs forward, and weren't honest about the cost of government. I tackled that problem head on. I was honest with people about what services and quality services cost, and we continue to move forward and build our city together with all of our public servants that were working in our parks, in our rec centers, and our libraries across the city of St. Paul. The fact of the matter is, the first thing we need to do is we need to roll back the tax cuts that the Republicans had for big tobacco, for large corporations, and for the richest Minnesotans who don't need those tax cuts. That's what's the most important thing that we can do for fiscal stability in the state of Minnesota. We need to be honest about the services that you provide. We need to be honest about how we build a great Minnesota, and we cannot cut our way to greatness, and we certainly can't cut on the backs of AFSCME employees across the state of Minnesota, and you can count on me to lead that fight.
Tina Liebling.
So yeah, absolutely, we have to make sure that we're not cutting taxes for the wealthy and shifting the burden onto lower income folks. But there are a couple specific things I think we can do that would help. One is we need to put inflation back in our budget forecasts so that really Minnesotans can see the real cost of the things that we need to buy. So that when we say, so we know that wages need to increase over time, and so we're honest about that in our budget. The second thing that we need to do that I think would really help is to let Minnesotans know what their taxes buy. So in Minnesota, you never see a sign that says, "Thank you, taxpayers, your gas tax fixed this road. Thank you, taxpayers, your taxes are keeping this disabled person in helping them get a job or helping them stay in a job." We need to find better ways to let Minnesotans know how important their taxes are and what they pay for, the wonderful things that they pay for, that the services that all of you deliver.
Erin.
When I'm the governor, the budget's going to stay balanced. And if we have to raise taxes to do that, I'll do that. When I was elected, we had budget deficits. In 2013 and 14, when I was the majority leader with Governor Dayton, we finally balanced the budget, and it's stable. And with that stable budget, we can plan for our future. Without it, we will begin cutting government again and cutting employees and wages, and that's no good for us. So no from me. A stably balanced budget is a goal. If we have to raise taxes to do it, I will. Because in order to plan our future, we have to have that stability. We have to protect the general fund so that we're making sure we have the funding available to pay for state employee wages, to make sure that we're paying for strong public schools all across the state of Minnesota. And when we see things like the provider tax cut, or we see transportation funding coming out of the general fund, it means we're not going to have the funding available to plan for our future, and that is no good for our future.
All right, Rebecca Otto.
So having served for 12 years as a state auditor and working with government finance and how the money flows through federal, state, and local, and being on State Board of Investment and the PARA board, PARA is very important. We don't have control as governors over financial downturns. They just happen naturally in the cycle. And so that's one thing that's out of your control. What's in your control as governor is that you can work to make sure that we have a diverse economy, that we're producing the next generation of good-paying jobs, because when revenue's coming in and people are working, that allows us to invest in those things that we hold dear, like strong public schools, making sure we're paying our workers who are doing that really important work for the public. We want excellent government, and so therefore we must invest in our people that are carrying out those services. So, and I'm a big advocate of public employees in that way. So next generation of jobs, and also universal, publicly financed, guaranteed, affordable, quality health care, which will unleash the innovators and make sure that we're doing homegrown business in the state of Minnesota. That's how we make sure we keep having a strong economy.
Paul Thissen.
Well, I hope that you know how I would balance the budget, because I've done it before. You know, when I was Speaker of the House, we faced a multi-billion-dollar budget deficit, a $2 billion that we had borrowed from our school districts and had nothing in our budget reserve. And we turned that around, working with Governor Dayton, and the way we did it was raising taxes on the wealthiest Minnesotans in this state. And I led our caucus to take the very first vote in a generation to raise general taxes, a very tough vote for us to take, because we knew it was the right thing to do for Minnesota, and we knew it was the right thing to do for you. And that kind of leadership, I think, is what we need in the next governor, someone that's willing to take those tough votes and actually push people to do it. I also want to say, in my 6 years as leader of the Democrats in the House, we did not let the Republicans pass a single tax bill. We stood up to them every single time. And the reason we did that is what you see with the tax bill that just passed. It is going to send us into deficit, and we are going to have to start over again. I will tell you, I will not balance the budget on the backs of the middle class, on the backs of the disabled, on the backs of our school children. I will make sure that our budget is balanced fairly for the people of Minnesota, and that's my fundamental commitment to all of you.
Tim Walz.
This question is going to become more and more important. I came back last night after we had the opportunity to have the Republicans unveil their budget. It is a disaster across the board, as you well know. It hits everything we hold dear. It undercuts every single investment that makes both our country and our states great. And what I understand is fighting these folks, what they're able to do and what we must do, and as your governor is able to do, is we all know where those investments need to be made. We need to make sure we're not just preaching to the choir. We need to make sure that we're building coalitions of our fellow Minnesotans who understand. When they hear about it and they said, oh, it's big unions or whatever, we need to make sure that they're very clear that big unions is my son's 5th grade teacher who's sitting in that classroom delivering a quality education. And what she's asking for is to make sure the state budget fully funds education so that we can have a workforce of the future. This is about being able to make the case to our neighbors, who 62 million of them across this country bought the nonsense of this abomination that's currently in the administration, that we didn't have the messages. We stand with them. We can balance the budget. We can fairly tax those that need to be taxed and invest in the things that make this state great.
Excellent. You all stayed on the mark as far as the question was concerned, and you all were within your time. Thank you. Question number 2. We believe all workers should have the freedom to join together and negotiate a fair return on their work. CEOs in Wisconsin and Iowa have that freedom, but workers there don't. How would you prevent the rich and powerful from taking away our freedom to join together in unions? Chris. Pardon me?
Okay, I think you want to start with me.
We want to go from all the way from the end down again.
He started last time.
Oh, this is. You want to start with Rebecca?
Okay.
Or with Tina? Okay, we're going to do it right. Tina, it is your turn.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, obviously, we have to stand strong against the so-called right to work in every way that we possibly can. And I call that the freeloader bill, because obviously it's intended to allow people to get the benefit of a union without paying for it, which is very unfair and would erode unions terribly. So I think this is something that's incredibly important, because obviously the working people, whether they're in a union or not, across the state, across the nation, benefit from the fact that unions exist. We don't get power just from hoping it's so, just from hoping that the boss will give you a fair shake. We need to come together to do that, and unions are absolutely critical And I think with all that, I actually forgot the question. What was the question?
All right, I'm going to read it, try and paraphrase it. How would you prevent the rich and powerful from taking away our freedom to join together in unions?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, no governor can do that alone. It's going to take all of us working together, exerting our power, and bringing other people into it. But we've got to have a DFL governor, because if we don't, it's game over for worker rights.
Erin Murphy's next.
If we want to tackle the rich and powerful, we must expand unions by organizing. In this last session, despite the strong Governor Dayton, we saw through this legislature backdoor union busting to teachers across the state of Minnesota. We have to have more ambition than just stopping bad things. We have to work together to continue to expand our universe, to continue to attract workers to our unions, to continue to bring them to our fight. That is how we build the middle class. That is how we make sure that our hard work pays off. That's what my dad taught me when he went on strike over and over and over again. That is what I learned with Minnesota nurses as we continue to organize nurses across the state. And as your governor, I will stand up for unions, and I will continue to do the work we did together to expand organizing rights and sign union cards and come out and make sure that Minnesotans understand how important your work is to building the middle class, worker rights, and prosperity for everybody in the state of Minnesota.
Rebecca Otto.
Veto.
Rebecca, we'd like you to respond to the question, not to what was said.
Oh, no, I'm not responding to her. I'm saying I'd veto any effort to undo collective bargaining. Veto.
Okay. Paul.
That's right. Well, that is right. The governor can just say no, and that's what we need to do. And I have demonstrated over and over again in my career in the legislature that I'm willing to stand up and say no to precisely those corporate interests, this consolidation of corporate wealth and power that is really distorting this country. So we absolutely need to do that. We need to organize, as I said at the beginning, and I will be right there organizing with you, making the case for how important the services that you all provide are, not just to you, but to the people that you serve, which is all Minnesotans. We also need to make sure that we change our campaign finance laws so that those folks don't have undue influence in addressing that. And I will say the biggest opponent of changing campaign finance laws in this state is the National Rifle Association. They have been fighting against that over and over and over again. We need to stand up to all those special interests. And the last thing, something I've been fighting for at the legislature, is we need to have these decisions made out in the open so the public knows what people are saying. When special interests get behind closed doors, that's when the people lose. And I will insist, I will not sign a single bill when I'm governor that is not negotiated in public and that is not done in a legitimate process where people actually know what they're voting on.
Tim.
You all know what's at stake. You watched it in Wisconsin. You watch it take 6 weeks in Iowa. The way we make sure you're collectively right to bargain, ensure our way of life, is by winning this race. Simple as that. Winning this race across the state. Better yet, win this race in places where we can pick up house seats in places like Albert Lee. Making sure that we're reaching out to our neighbors in greater Minnesota who we need to make sure understand the power of what we're doing, what it does to improve people's lives, what it does to improve their lives. We've got neighbors who are using their weekends to work against our right to collectively bargain. The damn weekend that you gave them by collectively bargaining, they're using against us. We need to make sure our message is aimed at those very people that so many have given up on, because we know this isn't just about politics, is a means to an end. If we do not win this election, we don't get to the end, which implements progressive policies that improve people's lives. You have to be able to know that this campaign is going to be fought from all the money across the country, ensuring that the last progressive Midwestern state falls. We need to say it stops here.
All right, Chris.
Well, I reject combining those things, rich and powerful, because they may be rich, but you are powerful. When you stand together, when we as union members, when we as union supporters stand together, we will not be defeated. When we stand with Education Minnesota and SEIU and MAPE and the AFL-CIO, we will win these elections. When you stood with me in 2005 in the city of St. Paul, we beat back those special interests. We beat those rich folks back that were taking our city in the wrong direction, and we won. And when you stood with Mark Dayton in 2010, the state of Minnesota won because we stood together. That is how we're going to beat back what the Republicans are trying to do. We know exactly what they're going to do. We saw it in the legislation that they sent up to the governor's desk this year, and thank God he was there to veto it. But the fact of the matter is, we need to continue to work together and win this election. That's why this election is more important than any other election, because within 15 seconds of the Republicans taking control, if they get the governor's office, right to work will be the first bill that they introduce and pass, and we cannot allow that to happen. We are powerful. They may be rich, but we have the ability to stop them.
All right, our third question. Nearly 200,000 Minnesotans receive a public pension. Do you support our defined benefit pensions? How will you keep them strong? All right, and this time we're going to begin with Erin Murphy.
I do support our public pensions, absolutely, and I will continue to work to make sure they're funded, they're balanced into the future. People who work for a living earn their pensions. You have earned your pension just like I earned my pension. And as I negotiated with the nurses, we made sure we not only protected the nurses who were currently working, but we also made sure we were protecting the pensioners. Retirement security is something we earn. We earn it with our pension. We will continue to work together in the legislature, with the legislature, to make sure that it is adequately funded, but know this from me. Under my watch, you will not lose your retirement security. You will not lose your pension. It is critical. We have given our word. You have earned it. We will keep it.
Rebecca Otto.
It's been my honor and pleasure to serve on the Para Board for 12 years and on the State Board of Investment now for 12 years, where we invest about $90 billion. A lot of it's your money. And in Minnesota, we believe in making sure that people have retirement security, especially our public employees. I go around the state and speak on this topic. I talk to Rotaries and chambers and whoever wants me to come, Lions clubs and Democratic groups. And a lot of them think that this is going to bankrupt government. That is absolutely not true. So for every dollar that we pay out in benefits, 71 cents was on investment returns. Whenever I tell groups that, their jaws drop. So the rumors about them bankrupting government are absolutely false. I know how to talk about pensions. I know the importance of pensions and defined benefit. All the studies show defined benefit plans are the only ones that will ensure retirement security. And as your governor, I will continue to educate. I'm a former teacher, was in the teachers union. I'm good at teaching. And I taught a bunch of 7th graders. So anyway, but that's what I will do as your governor. We're not going to walk backwards because we're not going to allow for poverty in our senior population in the state of Minnesota.
Paul.
Public pensions are a promise that we've made and a promise that as governor I will keep. I will veto any pension bill that changes from a defined benefit plan, and I will veto any pension bill that unfairly reduces the pensions that you have earned. I've led the fight for public pensions in the state legislature for my time there. As Speaker and as leader of the Democrats, it's the only committee that I chose to serve on because it's that important to me. I'm the only Speaker in the state of Minnesota's history to actually put a line item in the budget we put together to make sure that pensions were well funded and are going to be secure in the future. I have fought harder than anybody in the legislature to make sure that your pensions survive, and I will do that as the next governor. You know, the attack on public pensions by places like the Center for the American Experiment and Kim Crockett are wrong. They are front groups for the folks, these powerful corporate interests that want to undermine our ability to have a secure retirement, folks. And I have stood up against them, and I will continue to stand up against them. The thing that is the worst to me is when people come in and say, you shouldn't have your pension because I don't have mine. My belief in politics is that everybody should have a good retirement, and we should all be working to get to that place for everyone in the state. Okay. And as your governor, that's what I will do.
Tim.
A pension is a sacred promise that can't be broken. I'm the one up here who's taken the hits already from the Koch brothers because I stood up to them when they tried to go after the defined benefits of our veterans and their pensions. We stood up to them and made the case to the American public. If we do this right, we make the case to the public that they're absolutely right in knowing that you earn this and it's your money. When they came to us after the collapse, and many of us know that they go and they use the collapse of 2008 as a reason that our pensions aren't doing so well, they passed a ransom note across the desk and said, we need all this money to make sure we bail out the Wall Street banks. I said, no, until we go back and take a look at why is the middle class footing the bill over and over again. Fighting these fights and taking the case to your neighbors who do not have a defined benefit plan and have been told that's the reason the economy's hurting, that's the reason Wall Street was hurting. We need to be better messengers. We need to talk to them about the things that matter to them most, and we can do that. But be very clear on this. Never would I allow a bill to cross my desk that touched a defined pension. The same way we said with veterans. These are honorable commitments, must be met.
All right, Chris.
Well, actually, this is where President Trump and I have a little bit of a common perspective. He wants to build a wall between Mexico and the United States. I want to build a wall between your pensions and anyone that would come and try to destroy them and take them away from you. And you can count on a wall, about 6'3", 200-plus pound, blue-eyed wall, if I'm governor, that will never, ever, ever allow anyone to take your pension away. Look, when I went to work for the Public Defender's Office, I knew I wasn't going to get rich. But I knew I could make a difference as a public servant. And I knew that because of my union, I was going to have a decent wage, relatively decent working conditions, but I also knew that I could retire in dignity. You cannot work your entire life fulfilling your obligation and your promise only to have someone come in at the very end and tell you, sorry, we're going to take that away from you. And it doesn't matter whether you're a public employer or you're working for a private corporation. We're not going to allow fat cat CEOs to bankrupt their company, take their bonuses, and then cut out their workers' pensions. And we're not going to allow it to do that. We're going to fully fund pensions across the state of Minnesota, and I will fight like hell to protect the right that you have earned to a decent and dignified retirement.
Tina.
So you've heard us all pretty much say the same thing. And yes, I would also veto any bill that would take away your right to your earned pension. This is absolutely sacred, as somebody said. But beyond that, I think it's really important for us to convey to everyone that trickle-down economics doesn't work. You know, this is coming back. It's rearing its ugly head. The idea that when wealthy people have money in their pockets and in their bank accounts, that helps everybody. No. What helps the economy is when ordinary people, often retired people, have money in their pockets, because then they spend that money and it goes into the economy. So not only are pensions really, really important because you have earned them and you deserve to retire with dignity and respect, but because your pension and your ability to live decently helps everybody. And that's what we need. We need to keep reminding the voters of Minnesota, the people of Minnesota, of that fact.
All right. Question number 4. Across the state, many human services have been privatized, and we're seeing a renewed threat of reopening a long mothballed private prison. Privatization removes resources from our communities, is unaccountable to the public, and is dangerous for both clients and workers. What will you do to reverse this privatization threat?
Okay, so privatization is a no-go with me. There was an attempt to privatize the Office of the State Auditor in the legislature in 2015. I'm fighting it in the courts. I'm actually working on the constitutionality. I maintain it's unconstitutional. Anytime you privatize a government service, you have to ask yourself 2 questions. Number 1, what's not getting done? And number 2, how much is being diverted to profits? We are not going to commoditize our criminal justice system under me as governor. I will veto that. And you don't get to hold the private sector accountable like you do government. It's a very, very different model. And so, and in my office, the sad fact of the matter is it was a bit bipartisan, and these are good union jobs in the Office of the State Auditor. And so I am standing up and I'm fighting even after criticism because I'm having to spend precious resources to protect a constitutional office that fights the politics of greed and makes sure that government is accountable and transparent. And in Minnesota, you've already seen, this is what I do. I will stand up for what's right. We're not privatizing services.
All right, Paul?
Well, I, too, oppose privatization, and I have throughout my legislative career, and we have always pushed back against the private prison. I've had the privilege over the last several months, and in a previous career as well, of visiting most of the prisons that we have in the state of Minnesota. And I know that the tough work that's going on in those prisons to keep people safe, to keep the corrections officers safe, to make sure that we're providing the discipline that we need and providing the recovery that we need for those folks. The fact of the matter is, the problem is that we are not funding our services the way we should be funding them. The way we keep places safe, the way we keep our services strong for our corrections folks, for our Department of Human Services folks, is to actually fund our government in a way that actually allows that to happen. And as the next governor, those are going to be my priorities. Those are going to be my values. The fact of the matter is we've gotten to a place in this country where the dollar has become the only measure of our success, and I don't believe that that's the case. I think that our greatest measure of success is seeing each other as neighbors, as parents and friends, as volunteers, as members of our church or our synagogue or our mosque. Right. That's the value we need to put on the people of Minnesota, not the bottom line profit of private corporations.
Thank you. Tim.
Well, I fought these fights, and I'm at the tip of the spear on the one that's coming after our civil servants. It's no secret that the main fight's being fought against the VA and our AFGE brothers and sisters who provide quality care to our veterans, many of them veterans themselves. The Koch brothers and their front groups like Concerned Veterans for America have brought a privatization effort to the House that was unrelenting throughout the summer. I stood my ground, and when that piece of legislation was defeated, and we came back with a coalition that included the American Legion, the Disabled American Veterans, the Paralyzed Veterans of America, we made a case that was so strong that if you touch or try and privatize these services that are a sacred requirement for us to deliver, there will be hell to pay for that. When that bill came back to the floor, we got a unanimous vote. We got a unanimous vote on making sure that it didn't happen. That's how you build coalitions to ensure that it is absolutely politically untenable for them to make that case. And when it comes to privatization of prisons, nothing could be a worse idea. If your entire business model is based on high recidivism rates and undercutting what the service to the public is, it is a non-starter.
All right, Chris.
Privatization only works when you strip away people's wages, when you strip away their benefits, when you strip away their hard-earned pensions. Privatization is a sham. In 2000, when I was a young city council member, there was a former mayor named Coleman, and I hope you all know that, no relation. He tried to privatize city services. He tried to privatize the water department, and he told us that he was going to save some money and he were going to do all these things. And I said, well, how are you exactly going to save money? Because the cost of water is the cost of water, the cost of services, the cost of delivery, the cost of our pipes. And the fact of the matter is the only way that they were going to save money was by paying their employees less and having the executives of these companies that were going to step in take what was with the delta, the difference between what they were saving. The fact of the matter is it would have been less service. It would have been worse for our residents in the city of St. Paul. You can count on me to fight this. We did it in the city of St. Paul, and we're going to continue to do it. It doesn't work unless you treat people without dignity.
Tina?
Private profit has absolutely no place in prisons. And I have opposed this my entire time in the legislature, and I would continue to oppose this. And as somebody said in a previous question, veto.
All right, Erin.
Well, I want to begin, my brothers and sisters, by thanking you for the work that you do all across the state of Minnesota. And I want you to know how much I respect the work that you do. And I know that you bring skill and caring in all of the elements of what you do. And when the question of privatization comes to us, I think we have to ask first, why? And what are we going to lose if we allow a private profit industry to take over the work that people who are doing for the people of Minnesota? What do we lose in that transaction? I remember in this last session, one of my colleagues wanted to do some analytics to save some money and vend this out to a private entity. It was 3M. They had no proof that it was going to save money. We know that the health plans are not saving the state money, but we're using them. That is a privatization. We know that in testing we use Pearson, and that is not saving us money in our budgets and in our schools. We know that they're doing the same thing in the discussion about privatization in our prisons, and that has a moral inflection that we should not tolerate.
All right. Question 5. Are you willing to put your job as governor on the line to support Minnesota unions? We put our jobs and our lives on the line for Minnesota. All right, Paul.
Thank you.
It's working. It takes a minute to kick in sometimes.
All right, there we go. Oh, wow. All right, that is working. First of all, yes, I am. And I have done that in my career at the legislature. I have led our caucus when I was the Speaker of the House and the minority leader to go out and take some very tough votes. including spending nearly 50 hours on the House floor to pass the biggest expansion of labor rights in a generation, because it was the right thing to do. We passed the DREAM Act in the state of Minnesota because it was the right thing to do. We passed marriage equality in the state of Minnesota when it was polling at 38% because it was the right thing to do. That's the kind of leadership I've demonstrated, and so yes, I will put my political career on the line to make sure that the working people in this state are defended. Now, I do want to just take a moment to talk a little bit about the veterans bill that Tim just talked about. Because the fact of the matter is, the people that he didn't mention were actually the public employees unions, whose rights were stripped away by the bill that he put in place, who were stripped of protections for discipline. That is absolutely the case,
Okay,
Tim.
this is not a debate.
Well, it talks about who is going to be willing to stand up actually for public pensions right down to the wire. I will do that. The bill that Tim was a sponsor of did not do that.
Talking about unions here. All right, Tim, can you respond to the question about unions? I know it's hard.
It's not hard. All of us in this room know that when this is all said and done, there's going to be one of us standing against a Republican. There's going to be one of us standing that is separating this state from looking like Wisconsin or Minnesota. And all the pettiness amongst this is irrelevant. What we have to do is steal for the fight.
Okay, Paul, you'll have your turn. Tim, it's your turn. Please talk about unions.
Yes, I'm proud as a teacher. I know that my profession was made stronger by what my union did. I know my students' achievement was improved by that. I come from a union family. I understand the importance of it. In Congress, I've stood with my brothers and sisters. I come from the second reddest district in America with a Democratic setting in it, and I've had the support of everyone from HRC to Planned Parenthood to my union brothers and sisters right here. It's you who are sitting out there. I didn't win Southern Minnesota. I won because of the shared values of the union teacher with no bankroll, a mortgage, 2 young children who believed America could look different if we joined together and made the case to our neighbors. And when everybody said you couldn't win, we did win. Minnesota needs to know that's where it's at. You know that I don't just stand there with you in voice. I've been there with you on that, and I've been there with you in uniform for this nation. So I thank you.
Chris.
Really?
Okay, gentlemen. Chris.
When we ask you to stand with us to help us get elected, you put your jobs on the line. You put your jobs on the line when I ran for office in 2005 against Randy Kelly. And it's the least that we can do as elected officials to be willing to put our jobs on the line in order to support the work that you do. Look, the fact of the matter is, there is as I said earlier, there is a threat, there's an attack, there is a war on public employees in the state of Minnesota and across this country. And we need to be willing to stand up, not just for some ideal or some weird principle, but because you make this state great. We built up the quality of life in the state over generation after generation, and what we have built up can be taken away very quickly. And AFSCME and state employees are the backbone of that. So they're going to come up at us with bills. They're going to try to strip the budgets for all of you. They're going to try to do this. And if we have to shut government down in order to protect what we have built up over the years, we're going to do that. Because I will never balance the budget on the backs of all of you. I will stand for you, and I will put my political career on the line for all of you.
All right, Tina.
So I'm not running for governor because I need to be a big shot. I'm running for governor because I believe that the working people of this state really need a voice and a champion. Bernie Sanders said that the economy was rigged. You know what? It is rigged. A lot of our wealth has gone to the top. It continues to go to the top. We have corporate welfare. We have the big shots and the insiders calling the shots and making life tougher and tougher for working people. And that's why I'm running. And unions are critical. Union power is absolutely critical to turning this around. So if I wasn't for unions, I wouldn't be running for office.
Erin?
Barbara, would you give me the question one more time?
You bet. Hard to follow sometimes, I know. Basically, are you willing to put your job as governor on the line to support Minnesota unions? They say, we put our jobs and lives on the line for Minnesota, will you?
Hell yes. Every day. I'm running for governor to build the future for the people of Minnesota. I'm already put myself out there. I want to do it with you. I love politics. Serving in the legislature has been my great honor, and I've got a record of success and accomplishment, but I have spent as much time or more time traveling the state of Minnesota in my car and on my feet, and Minnesotans have been my very best teachers. And I know that you're putting yourself out there every single day to support yourselves and your families, and I honor that. And so, yes, hell yes, every single day I will be in there fighting for you. Know that I am Irish, I'm calm, but I'm a fighter, and I'm going to fight for you.
Rebecca.
So both my mom and my stepdad, who later adopted me, are in union. And when I was little, and I was 6, my dad left. There were 4 kids, and I was 6 years old. I know the importance of making sure that you can put food on the table and keep a roof over your head and provide for your family and yourself. I don't consider, like the job I'm in now, it is a job, but I'm supposed to be a leader. I don't follow, I lead. And I'm not afraid to lead on what's right, even when I'm criticized, when I know it's the right thing to do. And as governor, I plan on leading. And I have taken leadership positions as state auditor where I've been criticized and told I'd never return to public office again. But you know what? I'm still here. And I plan on, I'm so honored to be able to serve you as governor, and I'm asking for your support today. I will work to lead and to do the right thing, even when it's difficult, when it's the right thing to do for the common good.
All right, question 6. From Rose Creek to Zim, from Wilmer to Rochester, and from Minneapolis to International Falls, how will you engage Minnesotans across the state to win your campaign for governor? Tim.
The same way I have for 6 terms in the United States Congress. Think about that, 2 Democrats in 125 years. You don't do that alone. You do that by getting out and talking to where people's heart's at. You don't try and find the center of their politics. You find the center of their lives. When they look at me, they see themselves. They know that I've got young kids in public schools. They know that my wife is working, trying to make sure that we hold our family together. We get out there by showing the respect to them that they deserve, not trying to figure out why they vote against their own self-interest. Perhaps it would be important for us to understand their self-interest and to understand that they are just trying to struggle against changes in demographics, changes against technology, and trying to have the life. When we're in communities in southern Minnesota, small communities, we're not failed urban areas. We have a different way of life. And we need to make the case that this is one Minnesota, that the reason we don't have Highway 14 done in southern Minnesota as a 4-lane is not because we have transit in Minneapolis. We need transit in Minneapolis. The reason we don't have it done is we don't have people that in the legislature have the courage to raise the gas tax and fully make sure our transportation needs are there. Go talk to our neighbors, build the coalition, and get things done.
Chris.
Well, first of all, I have to counter. I've never heard the term Irish and calm in the same sentence. At least not in my family, that wasn't the case. But look at Democrats win when we are true to our values and we hold true to our principles, not when we're trying to be something that we're not when we run for office promising one thing and then governing in a different way. We win when we're honest with people and we talk about what our vision is for the state. And it's not just about what we have from our own little corner of the world. We've got to stop making rules for people that we don't really know much about. We've got to start making rules for people that are in a different position. And we need to focus in on the basics. We need to focus in on where people live and what their hopes and aspirations for their community and what economic security for their family means. Because the fact of the matter is people don't feel like sometimes the Democrats are talking about economic security for all. We're good about talking about it sometimes for some people, but we need to make sure that when we go to all those communities that you listed, we listen to them and say, what is your hope and aspiration? What do you need for this community to be great? Whether you're Fergus Falls or whether you're Worthington, how do we make every community in the state great? Let's listen to people and then govern based on what we hear.
Tina.
So I represent a district that's about 40% Republican. And as I said at the outset, I turned that district from red to blue, first Democrat in over 30 years to be elected to the legislature from Olmsted County, from Rochester. And I think that here's my ingredient for that. As I said, I've always been a bold progressive, never pretended to be in the middle of the road, because I think that's where you just find white lines and dead skunks, as they say. So, but my ingredients are these. I think people need to know that you are who you say you are. In other words, don't do stuff when it's safe, do stuff that's right. Never put my finger in the wind to decide which way to vote or what position to take. And secondly, I think people need to know that we care about them, that we have their interests at heart. And that's what I'm planning to do in running for this race. I think people across the state have the same interests. They all need clean water. They all need a good education. They all need health care. that they can access and afford. So
right.
That's what I'm running on.
Maybe more dead deer than skunks, huh? I don't know.
Both.
All right, Erin.
So I'm married to somebody named Joe, and in 1980, Joe and another guy named Mick started a painting company, and they paint houses for a living. And in 2008, when the economy crashed, Joe and Mick's company almost went under. And I am an optimist about our future and about our politics, but Joe is a pessimist, and when I ask him why he is a pessimist and why he's angry, he says, you know, not very many people on Wall Street and not many bankers paid a price for what happened to my company, but we did, and our family did. And I am grateful that Joe didn't vote for Donald Trump, because that would be a big problem in my home, let me tell you. But I can understand his frustration, and when I listen to people all over the state of Minnesota, and trust me, I've been in their homes and barns and combines, which I can drive now, our schools, our clinics, our hospitals, our businesses, Minnesotans want to make sure they're being heard, that they have a seat at the table and their issues are going to be considered. And they know that from me because they know me, because I've been there. Thank you.
Rebecca.
So I come from tough politics. I got elected in the legislature after we lost Paul Wellstone and Michelle Bachmann's old Senate district, so I know tough politics. But where I'm different is I appeal statewide because I've run and won statewide, and I had a primary challenge last time, and we won by 81% of the vote in August. So I know how to appeal. Minnesotans know me. They respect me. I live on a small farm, and I'm on the edge of the rural and metro, so I'm that true bridge between the rural and metro area. I work with firefighters, fire chiefs, mayors, administrators within local governments, and so they know me, they respect me. And I've run on the Rural Finance Authority Board for 12 years where we finance farm operations. So I am steeped in public pensions, investments, farms, local government finance. When Pawlenty ran for governor, I won more rural counties than he did. I win more rural counties than Dayton. I exceeded Governor Dayton's margin of victory by 6 points in 2014, and I exceeded Congressman Nolan's margin of victory by 12 points on the Iron Range. I can appeal to Minnesotans, and I can win the governor's race. Thank you.
Right, Paul?
Thanks. Well, one thing I know for sure is that we don't need to compromise our values in order to win. In fact, we are going to lose for certain if we do that. And the other thing I know for sure is the only way to win these races is with people-powered movements. And it's not about one individual candidate. It's about all of us working together. That's the way I've governed, and that's the way I've campaigned, and that's the way I'll do it. We need a candidate that can unify our party and can unify our state, and I think I'm the person that can do that. And the reason I say that is because I've done it. I led a caucus of geographically diverse, ideologically diverse people, and we turned that into a unified force that passed the most progressive agenda in a generation in this state and stood toe-to-toe and held the line on Republican attempts to take us backwards in this state. That's how we do it. And how did we do it? I went out and listened to my members. I visited their communities to hear from their neighbors. I worked with our allies to make sure that we were on the same page. And I had a simple personal mandate, and that was this. I believe the only success in politics is getting things that matter done for ordinary people. And I connected that with our caucus, and everything we did was around that. And that's the only kind of politics I believe in. And I think in this chaotic day of Trump and what's going on in chaos in Washington and gridlock, that's the kind of thing that's going to resonate with people, actually getting stuff done.
All right, now this is the question I think you've all been waiting for. We're going to hold that applause. What will you do to make affordable health care accessible for all Minnesotans? And what does affordable health care mean to you? Chris.
I think this is one of the central issues facing our country at this time, and it gets harder and harder to talk about when you see the Republicans in Congress continually trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which, while it has problems, is actually working for many people across the country. And they're trying to throw millions and millions of people off of health insurance. Health insurance has to be universal, it has to be affordable, and it has to be comprehensive. You cannot go bankrupt as a result of you trying to get health insurance. Look, I'm kind of facing this personally since I'm done with my job as mayor in a couple of months. If I have to get a COBRA, it's going to cost me $2,400 a month for me to provide family coverage for myself, my wife, and my son. I don't know exactly where the line of affordable is, but I know it sure as hell ain't at $2,400 a month. So we need to continue to work. We need to expand eligibility for Medicare. We need to continue to expand the work that we've done over the years. There's been some great leaders, and there are some who are sitting here at this table that have really led the fight on behalf of universal and affordable and comprehensive health care in the state of Minnesota. We're going to continue that fight.
All right, Tina?
It's time to stop talking about health insurance and talk about health care. We need single-payer health care in this state. We need it in this country because the system of health insurance has failed, it's failing, and it's never really going to give us what we need. So we need to move toward that in this state. There are things that we can do. We can't, of course, do it alone right now with the Trump administration there stopping us at every turn. But we need to get, first of all, we need to get the HMOs out of our public programs. We need to deprivatize our public programs. This is something I've been working on for years. I've had bills in to do it. I think even Republicans understand that those companies are wasting a lot of our money and making our system a lot more complicated than it needs to be. And we need to make sure that people can get health care without having to take money out of their pocket, because that just stops people from getting care that they need.
Right, Erin?
I'm a single-payer supporter. 25 years ago, I was a baby organizer for the Minnesota Nurses Association when we passed Minnesota Care, and I believe it's time to use Minnesota Care here in Minnesota and allow anyone who chooses to buy in, and it's time to contract directly with providers across the state and move the HMOs out. I don't want to wait for Congress. I don't have a lot of faith in Congress, but I have a lot of faith in us, and we have tackled tough issues all across the state of Minnesota. You are in a good health plan, so am I. We should make sure that people who have health coverage can count on it when they're sick. And it meets the same affordability standard that we're enjoying right now because of what we've been able to do collectively when we've negotiated for that. I'm a registered nurse. This is not a political question for me. This is a question of values. And there are people all over the state that are worried for their family security and their pocketbooks because health care has grown far too expensive. We led the way 25 years ago, and we will lead the way again when I'm your governor.
Rebecca?
I will be releasing a plan that is a universal health system, publicly financed, guaranteed, quality, affordable. And if you're a Minnesotan, what we need to get to is if you live in Minnesota, regardless of your pre-existing conditions, regardless of your age, and regardless of your employment status, you should be covered, period. It's the right thing to do, and it's not impossible. I have no faith at the federal level that they're going to get this done. We should push them too, but if they don't, we're going to do it because in Minnesota, we like to lead on good public policy. We care about the common good. That makes us really special. It's one of our values. And I've been working, and I will be releasing it, and I look forward to sharing it with you. Nothing is impossible when you put your mind to it. And whenever I've faced obstacles in my life, I haven't done it from a place of fear. I've done it from a place of clarity and conviction, and I'll do the same with this. Thank you.
Paul?
Well, I support Medicare for all as well, but this is a values issue. My parents were both public school teachers, and one of the lessons that they taught me by their example is that what they did every day was put my sister and me first. They paid it forward because they knew that the next generation was incredibly important. And that's how I come to my politics, from that simple proposition, which I think most Minnesotans, parents and most Minnesotans believe. What that means in healthcare is that we should all be in one pool, because I'm thankfully healthy today. But I know that one day I won't be. And there's some people right now that are not healthy that need my help. And there's going to be people that are going to help me in the future when I get sick. That's what our healthcare system should be about. It should be paying forward. It should be about taking care of each other, because we know we're all in the same boat ultimately. And that's the values that AFSCME shares as well. You work together because you know you're in the same boat together. We should approach our healthcare from that fundamental Minnesota value, and if we do that, we're going to get to the right kind of system.
All right. Tim?
I ran for Congress in 2006 on some pretty simple platforms, and one of those is the accessibility and the universal access to health care. It is a basic human right. I voted for the ACA that expanded health care to 26 million people, ensuring that pre-existing conditions and lifetime caps wouldn't kick you off, and I voted 70 times to defend it. But what I do know is the fight on health care is going to be fought at the state level. The next governor is going to be the one that protects us as a firewall from what's coming. Today, if many of you have heard, the president put an executive order forward allowing employers at their own whim to deny women reproductive care and reproductive rights. It's an assault on all the things we hold dear. We in Minnesota need to make sure that when you ask the question about affordability, no matter your income or pre-existing conditions, we need to make sure you're covered. And I want to make sure I thank our folks at SEIU who are here today. They are fighting to understand that just having insurance with no provider is also a problem. So thank you for fighting for our rural hospitals in Albert Lea and throughout southern Minnesota and greater Minnesota.
All right. Next up on our schedule is closing remarks, but I just want to ask Jennifer, do we have more time? All right. I think I'm going to ask a few more questions, and if someone could kind of tell me when we have the 7 minutes left for closing remarks, that would be helpful. All right. So I'm gonna start with question 8. These are bonus questions, because you guys stuck to the rules. I appreciate that. So we are a diverse union founded in the social justice movement. Currently, the rights of our sisters and brothers who are people of color, identify as LGBTQ, have a disability, or maybe lack documentation, are under threat. How will you protect our basic human rights? And we'll start with Tina.
Well, first of all, these are issues that are really important to me, and I think the premise of the question is absolutely right on. How is kind of a tough question, because we have to really protect these rights on so many fronts, and we're going to have to keep doing that over and over. Who you elect is part of that, but of course it involves all of us fighting together and making sure that we ourselves are bringing people in and not excluding them. But I strongly believe that we are all in this together. And when you look at our state and the demographic change, I say to people in Rochester who, once again, are not all Democrats, I say to them, listen, this is not charity. When we are concerned about children of color getting a good education in the inner city, or people who are immigrants being brought into our economic system, this is not about charity. This is self-interest, because we're all in this together, and we're not going to be a strong state unless we have everybody fully functioning and fully participating at the highest level they can, no matter where they come from, no matter what they look like.
Erin?
The labor movement is a social justice movement, and I come from labor, and everywhere I go, I am talking about racial disparities, bias, and racial discrimination that is holding people back from opportunity in Minnesota, and it is our job now as the leaders of the state to make advances, to make sure that people aren't falling behind in earning, in health, in education, in incarceration rates. We know the way forward is through bringing people to this conversation. I was at a house party. We've done more than 70 house parties across the state, and we had a conversation about this. A woman very frustrated with me and my position on driver's licenses for people who aren't documented. I gave her my answer, why, from my perspective, it was important to make sure that people had a driver's license even if they weren't documented, and she was not happy with my answer. But for 15 minutes, the room in Willmar, Minnesota, the mayor from that community and leaders from that community and neighbors in that community engaged in that conversation, and that room moved. That is how we're going to do this, and it is an imperative for us, for the people of Minnesota, to make sure Minnesota is a place where people want to come and work and live and raise their families.
Rebecca.
Thank you.
So this is personal for me. I don't talk about it often, but I have a diverse family. So and we have a diverse Minnesota family. So what I always say to folks is this: I don't care where you live. If you live on a reservation in Minnesota, if you live in Crookston, Minnesota, if you live in Caledonia, Minnesota, or you live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, we're all Minnesota family. And as you know, with family, we don't always get each other. We don't always like each other. But we must care about each other because we're all family. And I had a gentleman who was pushing me on the phone recently. He likes me, but he's not of my party. And he started to talk about those people. And I said, I said, we're all one big family. And I did that whole speech with him, and he got really quiet, and he didn't push back. Because you know what? We're not going to, the divide and conquer that's happening right now is a tactic in politics, and it must stop. And as your governor, we care about each other. We care about the common good.
Paul?
Well, how we do this is having those conversations and then having the courage of our convictions to follow through. You know, when we passed the DREAM Act, when we banned the box, when we passed marriage equality, those were not particularly popular issues at the time, but we worked with people outside the Capitol. I worked with people outside the Capitol to bring the energy in those conversations into the Capitol to make change. That's how we do it. And that's the lesson that I took from that and the lesson that I always learned. I think we need to be much more intentional about how we do this. We should look at every law through the prism. Is this going to grow or shrink the opportunity gaps in this state? I have legislation that would require us to do it, and as governor, I would implement that. But this is a pretty simple issue for me. You know, I've represented refugees in their asylum cases as a lawyer from Africa, from Asia, from Latin America on a pro bono basis for several years. And I know in detail the horror they face. You've seen the boy washed up on the shore, the Syrian boy washed up on the shore. When we take votes on these issues, when we stand up on these issues and put our name on the line, that's a test of character. We can't make this about political compromise. We can't make this about the political expediency. When we take votes on defending refugees, on defending immigrants, on standing up for the people of color in this state, that should tell you a lot about what kind of leader someone is going to be.
Tim.
I coached for a long time. You never throw at the guy who strikes out. You only throw at the guy who hits. So first of all, in 2006, I ran on full marriage equality, and the idea on that was that wasn't something like someone said, wow, that was amazing. You won in a rural area because you ran on something like that. And in spite of that, I said, I didn't win in spite of that. I won because of that. Standing up for our transgender troops who are trying to serve this nation with dignity is something that matters. But once again, this idea of talking about how you're going to do it, the strongest statement you can make is, especially with people of color, to making sure that people of color and diversity is represented, is by making sure you're putting those people in positions of leadership. And I think this morning, actions speak a lot louder than words. I think you know something about my character and the type of team I will build to make sure that that diversity is represented in true leadership and a true voice. And that's how we change Minnesota. That's how we change the conversation.
Chris?
Thank you. I once spoke in a room about this size, and I guess the difference was they had been drinking all afternoon. Well, I hope that's a difference. But anyways, I gave a speech on education, and at the end of it, this guy stood up and he says, I want to know why you support all these immigrants, and why do I have to dial 1 to get someone who speaks English when I call my bank? And went off on me, and I said, well, I find it bitterly ironic that the first question asked of me at the Norska Torska Klubben is why I support immigration. We have always been a diverse state. We are a nation of immigrants. We are a state of immigrants. We are a state of diversity. We need to have everyone at the table. Look, our economy cannot thrive unless everyone is included. We can't afford to leave anybody behind. I am proud of the work that we've done in the city of St. Paul to support our immigrant community. I am proud of the fact that we have a 100% index from the HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, in terms of our work on LGBTQ rights. I am proud of the fact that 2,700 employees in the city of St. Paul have gone through diversity and racial bias training. We're working on it, but it's tough conversations, it's knee to knee, it's eye to eye, and we've got to just buckle down and do the work because we can't afford to leave anybody behind.
All right. Our last question, it could be a yes or no question, or I'm going to give you an option to explain why you feel this way. What I want to know is, will you abide by your party endorsement? And we'll start with, is it Tina's turn or Erin's turn? Erin's turn.
Yes, I will abide by the DFL endorsement, and with that endorsement, I will win the primary. It is time to put us back in our politics again, and if we allow the next election to be conducted by those who raise the most money, can put the most mail in your mailbox and the most ads on your television, we will not be a part of that politics. 70 house parties across the state already, engaging in conversations, listening and getting to know Minnesotans and building a campaign from the ground up is the way that I will win that endorsement, and we will use that endorsement to win the primary and the general election. I will abide by the DFL endorsements. I'm going to earn it from you. Thank you very much.
Rebecca.
My plan is to abide by the endorsement. I'm concerned by hearing comments from some that say that they might just not do that. I think a party endorsement is very, very important. I'm working very hard to get it. I've held listening sessions around the state for months, engaging with Minnesotans to understand their hopes and dreams as well as their concerns and struggles. I've been through a tough primary where we were outspent 4-1, and we were victorious 4-1. So love can trump big money, and the endorsement for me will be very important.
Huh?
I'll abide by the endorsement because I fundamentally believe that this race and any race is not about an individual. And anybody who makes it about the individual is on a losing track. What this is about is building a movement of all of us working together to win. That's through our pro-labor friends, that's through all of our allies here today, and it's through the Democratic Party. And that's the way that we're going to not just build the power to win elections, but we're going to have the power to actually make progressive change in this state. One person can't do it alone, and we should not fool ourselves into thinking that that's the case.
Tim?
Our primary responsibility is to win in November. Nothing else matters than that, making sure that we're prepared to win in November. It's irresponsible not to be prepared. This field may not even be set up here yet. I fully intend, and we're working incredibly hard to win the endorsement. I've been endorsed by the DFL 6 times. I know that's the reason that we win, but I think it's important to be prepared to win a primary, to defend that, to make sure that we're in the best position to win in November so that the values that we hold dear, the values that middle class and working Minnesotans care that we are there to get done for them, we're able to do that. So I fully intend and hope I can earn your support for that endorsement. I will defend that in the primary, and I will make sure that we are best prepared to win in every corner of this state to make sure that we have a progressive governor come next November.
Chris.
I intend to fight like hell for the endorsement. I intend to receive the endorsement, and I intend to take that endorsement and carry it into victory in November. But as the people in this room know better than anybody, the most important thing is to have a candidate coming out of the DFL primary that can speak to the hearts and minds and the values of the people of the state of Minnesota and actually be able to win. We can't afford to lose this election. I hope that I can stand behind a DFL-endorsed candidate come June of next year, and as long as I'm convinced that that is the candidate that can best win in November and beat back the Republican money that will come into this race, will pour into the state of Minnesota from across this country, then I will stand strongly with that candidate. But we need to win this thing, folks, and we cannot afford to lose. You know that better than anybody. You know what the stakes are.
Tina.
So as I've said before, and kind of echoing what Paul Thissen said here, I don't think this race is about me. I'm not in it because it has to be me. But we need a candidate who's going to be about the working people of this state and stand firmly with them and not with the big shots and the insiders. So it absolutely is my intention to abide, but again, it is not about me, it's about this state and whether we can bring people together to understand where their interests really lie, because we can't, people often complain about partisanship. This is not about which tribe you belong to, it's about being on a side that's for and with the working people of this state.
All right, thank you, candidates. We're going to move now to closing statements. The order has been set by AFSCME, so we're going to go with the order that they've set despite the bonus questions. So we'll begin closing statements. Again, I remind you, you have 1 minute. We're going to begin with Tim Walz.
Great. Well, once again, thank you for all of the work you do. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for making Minnesota the place that we love. I'm grateful to stand with you. I'm grateful for the help. I'm grateful to stand in that classroom with you over the years. I never planned my life to run for office. I'm a teacher. I'm a soldier. I'm a dad. I'm a coach. That's what I do. But my life prepared me well to do it. I know what Minnesotans are going through every day. I know what it's like to try and find daycare. I know what it's like to try and figure out how to make ends meet when your child's sick and you're trying to figure out if you've got time away. Those are the things that Minnesotans care about. I don't look a lot like a lot of other Democrats. That's because we don't win in any other place. We always have better ideas, and we're not able to win and communicate with folks who think we're speaking to their heart. I've been able to do that. They trust me. They know that I have their best interest at heart, and we understand what's at stake here. The Minnesota that we love, the investments in our community that we care about, those schools where I've spent my time, those National Guard units where our neighbors come out to defend us or pick up after tornadoes and after floods. I hope I can earn your support. We can make Minnesota even greater than it is.
Paul?
Well, what I've done in my life and in my political career is pretty simple. I've rolled up my sleeves, I've worked hard, and I've delivered results for everyday Minnesotans. Just like all of you do every day. That's the values that we share. And it's not flashy, but it's what makes this state the state that it is. And as I survey the landscape today, I'm pissed. I'm angry that our culture values coarse and profanity over more old-fashioned values like decency and intelligence and respect and love and concern for the least among us. I'm mad that we're in a situation now where the rich and the powerful, the well-connected, a fewer and fewer, smaller and smaller group are making all the decisions that's undermining our ability of we the people to control our own destiny. I'm angry at Congress and the legislative leadership who think it's okay to cut deals behind closed doors. That's not what this should be about. I've stood up to that time and time again, and I will continue with your help to do that as the next governor. This is what I promise you. I will stand with you every step of the way. I will have you at the table. I'll be straight with you even when we disagree. I will work with you all the time and work hard for you, and at the end of the day, I will make sure that what we are doing, what our goal is, delivering results for people across this state.
All right.
That's what we need.
Erin?
Rebecca?
Rebecca,
Otto, I thank you so much for hearing us today and allowing us to be here. I'm running against the politics of unfettered greed and running to make sure we're operating with the politics of the common good, because that's a Minnesota value. And I don't care, again, where you live in the state. You might live in the Northwest, the Southeast, the central part of the state, or central east. But one thing we all hold in common is this. The same things keep us up at night. Keeping a roof over our head, food on our table, clothes on our back, and our health. My agenda is called Renew Minnesota. I've released my statewide vision name. It's Renew Minnesota. I've released the first part of my plan, Minnesota-powered plan. I'm going to be releasing another part of my plan. And in it, all Minnesotans will be able to see themselves in it, because we also stay up at night because of our health. So I'm going to make sure that my agenda is a bread and butter agenda that will speak to all Minnesotans, and I would love to be your governor. Thank you.
Now Erin.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you, everybody, for being here and for such an awesome forum. I want to let you know that I believe in us, and I believe in our capacity to solve the toughest problems in front of us, and I have seen it over and over again using a kind of politics that improves people's lives. And when we do that, we can build that bright future that I know is in store for us. So our kids and our grandkids want to live here, raise their kids here, start their businesses here. That's our obligation now as the leaders of the state of Minnesota. We can't go into this election afraid. We can't be afraid. We have to stand up for what we believe in, for an honest and progressive vision for the state of Minnesota. That's why people choose us. That's why people vote for us. And that is how we will prepare to govern and build that bright future. I need you in this fight with me. And if you believe, like I believe, in our capacity to do that, I hope that you'll join me. I want to earn your support. I want to earn your vote. But mostly, I want to earn your trust and put that back in our politics again.
Right.
Thank you so much for such an awesome afternoon.
Tina.
So the real question that everybody is, I think, concerned about is, who can win? And what does it take to win? Because we all know that we have to win. And I will submit to you that winning, first of all, I think that a lot of us could win, but I think that what increases our chances of winning is when we are authentic, when we pick people who say what they really believe and have a record of being consistent, because people have really good BS detectors nowadays in politics. And if we think we know what's safe, that we're going to pick somebody that's going to be safe to win, we're fooling ourselves, because look what happened in 2016. A lot of us thought we were safe and we were going to win, and we were 100% wrong. So we need to let people know that we are for them. That's what we need to do, not that they're with us. I'd like you to go to my website, tinaliebling.com. You can find out more about me. I know I'm not as well known as some of the people up here, but my positions are on my website. And finally, if you want to know what distinguishes the six of us, just remember what TINA stands for. There is no alternative.
All right, thank you, Tina. Chris.
Maybe one. People, can we reset the clock? People often ask, you know, what does it take to be a great mayor? And I'm not putting myself in that category, but I say that the person that's the mayor of a city has to love that city more than any other person in it. And I think the same thing is true for a governor. You have to love this state. You have to love every corner of the state of Minnesota, and I do. I am passionate about Minnesota. But I'm passionate about what we have built up in this state. I am passionate of what we have done together. The work that you do in our prisons to keep us safe. The work that you do in our libraries and in our parks. The work that you do to help us keep clean drinking water across the state of Minnesota. You are what makes Minnesota great. And I want to support you as the next governor in the state of Minnesota. I know how hard you work, and I know you're not getting rich at it, but you can make a difference, and you have made a difference. This is a great state, but it's only going to be great if we continue to invest in the very things that have made it. It takes only one legislative session to undo decades of progress across the state of Minnesota. Folks, we got to win this one. I'm in the best position to win, and with your support, we are going to march in to the corner office of the state capitol and govern on behalf of everyone in the state of Minnesota.
Thank you all very much. Some very civil discourse here. I know debates are sometimes more fun, but I think a forum like this is much more informative. We saw some debates get really out of hand in the presidential election, and this one showed us all what civil discourse is like. So I thank you all very much. I thank the AFSCME members for coming here in their sea of green. Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like, hold your applause, because before we're finished, hey everybody, I know you had all that pent-up applause, right? You had to let her rip now. But before we're finished, I want to invite President Judy Wahlberg up for some closing remarks. Thank you for having me today, everybody. I appreciate it. There you are.
That's okay. It's okay. It's a wet speech now, but we'll deal with it. No, that's okay. What an amazing forum. We've got a great field of strong candidates, don't we? We're calling on all of them to publicly support our freedom to join together in strong unions to make our communities better. I want to thank all the candidates for showing us where they stand on issues that matter to working peoples. Thank you, Tim Walz. Thank you, Paul Thissen. Thank you, Rebecca Otto. Thank you, Erin Murphy. Thank you, Tina Liebling. Thank you, Chris Coleman. And thank you, AFSCME members. Together, we are one of the most politically active unions in the state. We never surrender at the Capitol or at the ballot box. One thing is certain: students are smarter, families are healthier, and our communities are safer when working people have a voice in the halls of power. Today's forum begins AFSCME screening and endorsement process. AFSCME members will continue one-on-one conversations about issues that matter to working people. At a later date, our union's executive board will screen and endorse a candidate for governor. Working people must unite to elect a pro-worker governor in 2018. Our survival depends on it. We will now recess, and our convention will reconvene in 30 minutes at 3 o'clock. Thank you again.